I would like to present to you the new architecture curriculum. However, I would like to present you in a way that you will understand it from the point of view of a student. A student who just came out of matriculation or higher like A-level certification or foundation course that leads to the architecture course. If you're a student of architecture, you thought that architecture could be something that is going to either make you rich, make you able to express yourself better in terms of creative expressions, because you are someone who like to do things with computers or sketching or art or anything else like design. You like to make things. And you think that architecture is going to be something for you. You could be also influenced by people older than you, your parents or your uncles and aunties, and someone who think that architecture will be good for you because of your nature. Because they might be an architect themselves and they see that your nature will be suitable to study architecture. And you go to school, architecture school, and you learn about having to get materials and things ready, because often in the first year you'll be doing a lot of this work with your hands, models, and you'd be also wanting to do a lot of sketches because that's expected of you. You feel something special about being a student of architecture because you hear from your friends, they're saying, those students who are not in the architecture course are saying, oh, we got to do this, we got to be doing things that is different than what you're doing. And then you'd be thinking about those who are doing fine arts. But one thing that you may be thinking that is weird is that you feel as if you have to act in a certain way and be a certain person in order to be accepted in the School of Architecture. There is something that is pulling you into the School of Architecture in terms of how the group thinking to accept you in it. Has it always been that way? Would architecture school, the way students interact, would it be something that is similar to other schools, other subjects? What about medical students? What about engineering students? What about computer science students? What about lawyers or law students? What about these courses? Is there something that is special or different to others that make you an architecture student? Often we think about aesthetics, and often we think about design. And an architecture student, we need to have a keen eye, an observant eye for drawings, for discerning, a keen eye to judge whether something is a good design or not. And that's what the architecture student needs to discover as they go on. So much of the influence comes from the mentors. You cannot do without the mentors. You expect to be guided by individuals who are older than you, who are experienced in architecture, and some of them are practitioners outside, and some of them are your lecturers. And they will give the guidance. It's a project coming on, and there are instructions and there are feedback given to you, because you come to the school expected to be doing a presentation. So this is something that you commonly find in architecture school, that you're expected to present, you're expected to sketch it out, you're expected to do some research on the subject matter. You can be learning anything. Anything can be thrown at you with the instructions. Read a book. Review the book. Here's some topics. Pick a topic or do this topic and write about this topic. And you go off to the library and write about it. Or you go and search for it in the internet. Write about Villa Savoy, or write about, not only write, but present as well in a seminar. Then off you go, doing your work and presenting it. Because what I'm trying to imagine is the other way around. Because as an academic or a former academic, I've always been thinking about what I expect them to do. But now I'm thinking from their point of view. There's enough instruction for them to, okay, I'm going to present at this date, at this time, on this date, at this time, and I'm going to be ready for it. And if your lecturer says, we're going to change your date to something earlier or something later, and say, no, I'm not ready for that because I've already focused on doing my work, because all these things could happen that would throw you off balance, and you'd be understandably annoyed or irritated if things are not precisely what they are set out to be earlier and changed later by your tutors. And then suddenly the instructions are different, for example. We need more of this to be added to your presentation. And then you'll be saying, oh my God, shouldn't have that been included earlier? Was that intentional that a lecturer or an academic would do that? It could be intentional. But I don't see the relevant outcome for that sort of challenge being done last minute to the student. It happens a lot in schools of architecture where the student will present and then you should have done this, you should have done that, you should have researched on this. But then it was by somebody else who's coming in to give some feedback, but the lecturers that was in charge before, the one that was guiding the student, did not say those things. And then why is it being said now when I presented? And then people would argue, you should know better than that and would have taken care of that. There's a lot of feeling of unfairness when things are changed or things are being given, the feedback given to the student that says, I'm looking for this, but you don't have it that. So there is this messing about by the invited tutor or invited critique that comment on the student's work. And it's even worse if it's in the higher levels. What is this messing about that I've come to this point, and come to this point where I'm saying things in general, but these things happened, and why are they happening? In certain schools of architecture, I've experienced these things, so I'm just saying something here. So if possible, I do not want certain tutors or certain critics to come, because they're not going to appreciate what the student had done so far. And they keep on talking about should have, and or why didn't you do this, or didn't you do that. What they need to do, these critiques that come, is that just take it as it is and give a reasonable critique that is based on what the student had done and what the tutor had assisted with, and not with I should have done this and you should have done this and you should have done that. So when I talk about the new curriculum from a student of architecture point of view, you're talking about a program that's not to be messed about. A program which is based on education, the educating of the potential graduate in architecture. In educational programs, it's really well crafted and thought out carefully what are the outcomes and what is the expectations by the mentor. A mentor is that person whom the student of architecture refer to, and if possible, that mentor is someone that has a lot of say in how the student will do well or not. I mean, it's up to the student to take up the challenge and the mentor to oversee that the students are developing their work, and the thought process or the design process or the creative process that the student underwent or have undergone, to come to a point where they produce a set of drawings. And in that set of drawings is graphically well done enough to represent what the thought process and the ideas that students had dealt with for that duration of time. Essentially, in architecture school, compared to other schools, or compared to other disciplines like medicine, law, and engineering, the essential thing is that ability to develop that creative process and come up with a set of drawings. There's a lot of emphasis on the drawings or the drawings produced at the end. And the academic who is guiding the student would sometimes say, you've got to produce these drawings, if not you fail. This has to be a complete set. That is at the end when they have to produce the drawings and they know that the contract or the unwritten contract or the deliverables says you got to have a certain amount of drawings, enough to explain the design concept and all the ideas. But during that process, the creative process, in the middle of it, you need to be careful that the students are still in that thought process, going about trying to test their ideas And the expectation at that time with the drawings need to be more forgiving or need to be more flexible by the academic, so that the student of architecture don't feel that they have to be rushed or stressed out with trying to make it perfect, because there's a level of acceptance in terms of what is being produced before the final presentation, which need to be, shall we say, well received by the academic. The academic need to be very careful in dealing with the hard work, or there may not be a lot of work done at that time when the students are still struggling with the thought process and coming out with the ideas or getting a good concept and so on. Some people are more inclined to be a last minute ideas person, and some people get the ideas fairly early. We keep on going back and forth. The tutors will see the students in the desk crit or the group crit to get them to make decisions. Yes, the core skill here is the ability to make decisions. The ability to make decisions is something that you do all of your life. I'm going to choose black or white. I'm going to choose this dinner or that meal. I'm going to choose to go to this city or that city for a trip. I mean, these are decisions that people make every day. And sometimes you can guide people to make the right decisions. And this is true of architecture design studio. Before I go into the essential matter with regard to architecture design studio, before I go into identifying the design problem and solving the design problem, before I go into that, the nature of an architectural student is different than an engineer. We tend to want to make architecture students like an engineer or even a scientist, diagnosing the problem and applying a solution like that. Like a doctor or medical practitioner. What is the symptom? Identify the problem and give this medicine to resolve it. We tend to end up like that in architecture school. Let me give you some examples. The way we address students' work, which I have been making this mistake myself, especially in my younger academic life, is we give a prescription, right? This problem that you have, I think you could do it this way. It's when we say you could do it that way, have the student considered enough factors, enough design problems that is associated with one main design problem, like the need to make the building bigger, like you add a couple of floors, is something. If it's too early, like the students haven't really thought about a lot of the design problems about the building, but they haven't thought about shall we say, the program of creating additional programs and adding it to the building, existing building, which they need to create a new building out of. They didn't think about it, but somebody would come in, and a tutor would come in and say, I think you need to resolve that problem, as if that's the prescription, which the student of architecture did not think of. And that's not fair. There's a lot of unfairness in the design critique of the mentor. No, this is not a mentor, because this person doesn't understand how to guide a student carefully. No, that's why I'm learning from my mistakes. That's why I'm saying this to everyone. The design problem of a design thesis, for example, it could be a simple building like a market, for a community market, for a certain area. Somebody will say how many people are in that area, and then how many people will come here, with the volume of people, making the market as if it's like a transport hub. But a marketplace has some social identity or some social factor, or a place where people come and socialize. A market has buying and selling. A market would be an interchange between, like a stop, a middle, or a transition, or a space between another destination and another destination. For a housewife or an elderly woman living alone, or for a young couple, you talk about a market as if it's the same way people would think about it. People from different backgrounds, or different needs, or different situations. So, you see, that's the problem in we addressing something from our point of view, or from our own experience. How do we actually let on to a student of architecture give our view of our experience, and yet it could be something that's helpful? Is the way we critique, just say we're visiting critique, and we're saying that that's a design problem that you're considering, the demographics, or the case study. So how does the student of architecture consider different scenario and coming up with the design problem? Is visiting case studies of different markets and the characteristic of the place. If there is another market that he can study how successful that market is, another reference here, a precedent or a case study, he could visit that market and actually study it in depth. If it's a successful market in terms of its design and how it has been done by the previous architect. And sometimes architecture that is not done by an architect could be successful as well. It's just a utilitarian building. But why do you need an architect? Does all these things come out? So when we have the design process and identifying the design problems, which could be different things regarding a simple program, overall program like a marketplace. There could be an overall program like the library, or the bus station, or the school, just say school of architecture, that someone would want to deal with. And the design problem could be to do with the type of school of architecture that one was to design. Just say one have a site, and one wants to do a school of architecture out of the blue. And there are reasons that says that you could have a School of Architecture there, and that it has, then you talk about the curriculum and how it is a School of Architecture that has a lot of interaction between the people that is around that area and the school itself. So those design problems that you come up with could be very technical, or could be very, shall we say, intangible at the moment. And you have to define it further. So going back to the first year student, when he or she starts, and you give a design problem, which is a simple design problem, hopefully, where all the student has to do is have a certain area and a certain context and resolve it. If a design thesis or somebody in the 5th year level would try to do the same thing the first year student is doing, do you think they would be more successful at it than the first year student? Maybe not, you see. But the training is the same. So what I'm trying to say here is the managing of the student in the project, whatever duration of time given by the mentor, is critical, because there is a collaboration between the student and the mentor. If the mentor doesn't know this, or just act as if it's a generalization, everything is a general way of tackling all the students in a general way, and it's just repeating a bit of quotes every now and then, it is not a satisfactory experience for the student of architecture. Students of architecture, they want to do their own thing, says, maybe the argument is, we don't want to be holding their hands and spoon feeding them. This is not about spoon feeding them. This is about giving the chance for the student to find themselves amidst all this, and to find themselves something relevance to the topic and the study of the topic, whatever that you give them in the first year. Just say, that's why I am arguing here that you can give anything to the first year student, because they will deal the same way, the thought process to deal with, like, just say you were saying, design a housing for 200 units of housing. Okay? The technical bit needed guidance, obviously, in the first year student, because it's a high-rise building. But it doesn't mean that a first year student cannot do a high-rise building, because the case study is out there for them to study what a high-rise building is. Oh no, they haven't learned the subject of a high-rise building design in the first year, so it's in the 4th year. Why we can't give them a high-rise 200 units high-rise? No. When you look at a case study of a high-rise with 200 units, right, and you already calculated it as the mentor, as the person who's going to guide the student, you already calculated it. Much of your collaboration have been decided already. But what the student need to learn from this are 2 things. 1 is social interactive spaces. 2 is designing the unit. So when they start designing a unit based on, just say 200 units for students' hostel. So they start designing for them first, 1 unit, and they replicate it. And when they replicate it in a way that, it can be very organic. And they do a model so that it can be built. Nowadays, when you look at parametric design, you can build anything. Frank Gehry started it with that Bilbao Museum. But of course, there's an underlying structure in there. We don't penalize the first year student for the structural part. They will know when they come to another year that their building doesn't work. What you want to do is not to talk about the structure so much as buildability, but the fact that they can organize the units and replicate it in a way that using models. So it will turn out to be well done. You can also get them to read about some things about housing and the importance of social interaction space. And then they would go in and out from the huge 1 to 500 scale to 1:5 scale, and they could come up with the unit design. And this is the argument that says you don't have to wait until the 4th year to do housing. You can do it in the first year. Even you can do it when they step in for the first time. What does that do to the student of architecture who comes in right from matriculation, comes in right from foundation year, A-levels, and have to do a housing project of 200 units? What does that say? That says that architecture is exciting. Architecture is something that is real, and architecture is not only to do with form making, it's to do with actually working out things that work for the unit. Housing unit is so interesting because it is a typology that is the closest to anyone's heart or anyone's well-being, or shall we say existence. Everybody has to come from a housing, be it a landed property or a flat or condominium. They lived there, or even a shed somewhere, depending on the circumstances of a human being. And there is a lot of context to do with how people interact. You introduce context, you introduce housing, you introduce form making, you introduce functional building right from the start, get go, here you are. And then the student of architecture, when they do housing again in the 3rd year, say, after a while, they would do something in a conservation area. That experience in the first year is going to teach them a lot to hang on to, and wow, I did that housing then, and I really had that, because they are referring back to their work, and they are referring back, to references and case studies. It would be great if you could take the student into a case study of a 200-unit building, or make them redesign it in the 3rd year. Even during the first year's project, you could do that if you want, but I'm just focusing on 4 design problems just now. And what were they? Unit design, form making, functional, unit design, form making, and also case study of how to go and make it work. There are those basic 4 things, 4 design problems, that the student, the interlocking space, the in-between space as well. 4 things only. 4 design problem. You determine what the design problem that they need to do. So every single student would do it in a different way. So there you go. I just want to give a teaser here. This is part 1 of the new architecture curriculum. And I'm giving it from the point of view of the student of architecture that comes in the first year. Later, I will give different parts and different episodes to focus on different things. So thank you very much for listening to this session. And I hope that you can keep on listening to Talk Architecture Podcast on a very interesting topic that is disrupting architecture education. Thank you.